Rome remembered her as a seductress. Egypt remembered her as a queen. Mark Antony believed himself a conqueror. History remembers him as a man who stood between worlds and chose neither. But what if their greatest mistake was not love? What if the fall of two extraordinary figures was not driven by passion alone, but by power, pride, and a fatal misunderstanding of how empires truly survive? This is not a love story in the romantic sense. It is a story of political calculation, psychological fracture, and tragic inevitability. It is the story of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and how their alliance reshaped the ancient world.
When Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Rome did not fall into peace. It collapsed into uncertainty. The Republic had already been hollowed out, its traditions weakened by decades of civil war. Caesar's death did not restore balance, it exposed the vacuum. Into this fractured world emerged three men who claimed to rule in Caesar's name: Octavian, the adopted son; Lepidus, the bureaucratic survivor; and Mark Antony, the general, the soldier, the loyal companion of Caesar himself. Antony was no philosopher king. He was charismatic, impulsive, and deeply Roman in his understanding of honor. He believed power was won through loyalty, spectacle, and strength, and for a time it worked. The Roman world was divided. Octavian controlled the west. Antony took the east, wealthy, ancient, and dangerously independent. And at the heart of that eastern world stood Egypt.
Cleopatra VII was not new to danger. She had learned early that power was never inherited securely. It had to be defended daily. She spoke multiple languages, understood Greek philosophy, Egyptian theology, and Roman politics with unsettling clarity. To Rome, Egypt was a prize. To Cleopatra, Rome was an existential threat. She had already survived alliance with Julius Caesar, bearing him a son, Caesarion, a living symbol of political ambition. But after Caesar's death, that protection vanished. Egypt needed a new shield, and Mark Antony needed resources. Their meeting at Tarsus was not accidental, nor romantic in origin. It was theater, carefully staged power theater. Cleopatra arrived not as a supplicant queen, but as the embodiment of divine kingship. Gold, incense, purple sails, she understood Rome's weakness for spectacle. Antony was impressed, but more dangerously, he was disarmed. Cleopatra did not seduce him, she matched him, intellectually, politically, symbolically. For Antony, accustomed to dominance, this was intoxicating. At first, their relationship was brutally pragmatic. Cleopatra needed Roman military support to secure her throne. Antony needed Egypt's wealth to fund his campaigns against Parthia, Rome's great eastern enemy. They gave each other exactly what Rome denied them: validation. In Alexandria, Antony was not a junior partner to Octavian. He was a king among kings. For Cleopatra, Antony was not a conqueror. He was a tool, dangerous, powerful, but necessary. Together, they created a court that blurred lines Rome depended on keeping sharp. Roman discipline gave way to Hellenistic grandeur. Politics mixed with ritual. Power dressed itself as divinity, and Rome watched, uneasily. Mark Antony's greatest enemy was never Octavian. It was his own divided identity. He wanted to be Roman, disciplined, respected, legitimate. But he also wanted autonomy, admiration, and freedom from Rome's suffocating traditions. In Cleopatra's world, he was not compared to Caesar. He was not overshadowed by Octavian's cold efficiency. He was seen. But Rome does not forgive ambiguity. Antony's prolonged absence from Rome fueled rumors. His indulgence in Eastern customs was framed as betrayal. Octavian understood something Antony did not. Perception was power. While Antony ruled theatrically, Octavian ruled symbolically. He presented himself as Rome's protector, traditional, restrained, inevitable. And slowly, the narrative turned. Cleopatra was not blinded by love. She was making a wager. By aligning herself completely with Antony, she was betting against Octavian's rise. It was a rational gamble, but a dangerous one. She believed Rome could be divided permanently. She believed the East could rival the West. She underestimated one thing: Rome's obsession with unity. When Antony formally recognized Cleopatra's children as rulers of Eastern territories, Rome erupted. To Romans, this was not diplomacy, it was treason. Octavian seized the moment. He did not declare war on Antony, he declared war on Cleopatra. This was not a coincidence. By framing the conflict as Rome versus a foreign queen, Octavian transformed civil war into moral crusade, and Antony allowed it to happen. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE was not lost on the sea alone. It was lost long before the ships sailed. Antony's forces were larger, but divided. Cleopatra commanded a fleet, a political necessity that became a strategic liability. When Cleopatra withdrew from the battle, Antony followed. To historians, this has often been framed as cowardice or infatuation, but psychologically, it reveals something deeper. Antony did not know who he was fighting for anymore. Rome? Cleopatra? His own wounded pride? Octavian knew exactly what he was fighting for: legitimacy. Actium shattered Antony's image as Rome's great general, and once reputation dies in Rome, power follows.
After Actium, the end was inevitable, but not immediate. In Alexandria, Antony and Cleopatra clung to ritual. They staged banquets, performances, and symbols of sovereignty. These were not acts of denial, they were acts of resistance. By controlling the spectacle, they tried to control the meaning of their defeat. But Octavian advanced relentlessly. Antony, betrayed by allies and misled by false reports, attempted suicide, failing even in death at first. Cleopatra had him brought to her. He died in her arms, not as a Roman hero, but as a man stripped of narrative. And Cleopatra understood the final truth. Rome would parade her. Octavian would rewrite her story, unless she acted first.
Cleopatra's suicide was not despair, it was defiance. By choosing her own death, she denied Rome its final spectacle. No chains, no triumphal procession, no humiliation. She died as she lived, controlling symbolism to the end. With her death, Egypt became a Roman province. The ancient world gave way to an empire without rival. Octavian became Augustus. Rome found peace, but at the cost of its republic. And the story of Cleopatra and Mark Antony was simplified, too simplified.
History remembered passion because it was easier than complexity. It was easier to blame love than to confront uncomfortable truths. That Rome could not tolerate dual power. That Antony was psychologically unprepared for symbolic warfare. That Cleopatra understood power, but misjudged Rome's appetite for dominance. They did not fall because they loved too much. They fell because they believed power could be shared. Rome never believed that.
Cleopatra and Mark Antony did not just lose an empire, they marked the moment when individuality gave way to inevitability, when charisma yielded to systems, when Rome chose order over brilliance. Their tragedy is not personal, it is historical, and perhaps that is why it endures. History remembers empires for their victories, but sometimes the most revealing stories are written in their final mistakes. If this story moved you, explore the others on this channel. Here, we don't just revisit the past, we question it.